Have you ever found yourself incredibly busy, ticking off every box, constantly climbing a ladder, only to pause and wonder if that ladder might be leaning against the wrong wall? You achieve that outward success, but there's this nagging inner hunger for something more, something deeper. Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a book that truly transforms how we think about effectiveness and fulfillment. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this isn't just, a how-to guide. It's really an invitation to profound self-exploration and a fresh understanding of our impact on the world. It's pretty remarkable. Authors like Warren Bennis called it so elegantly written, so useful, that it's going to be my gift to everyone I know. And Tom Peters, from In Search of Excellence, he actually said it could change your life.
Oh, it absolutely can. And our mission today in this deep dive is really to pull out the most pertinent insights from Covey's, quarter century of research. We want to understand that fundamental difference between what often passes for success, the superficial kind, and genuine, sustainable effectiveness. Covey's work, I think, brilliantly illuminates what truly distinguishes those people who are happy, healthy, and successful from those who maybe sacrifice meaning, sacrifice personal well-being for a much narrower, often kind of hollow definition of achievement.
Yeah, that initial observation Covey made really hits home for me. He saw so many people achieving, tremendous professional success, yet feeling this disconnect, this inner hunger, like you said, because it often came at the cost of their personal lives, right? Their family relationships, sometimes even their own sense of self. So we're going to explore the fundamental principles that, according to Covey, truly address that very issue. Okay, so if quick fixes and surface level changes aren't the answer, where does Covey suggest we really start? He begins by kind of dissecting what he calls the initial problem in a lot of popular approaches, this focus on the personality ethic.
Right. The personality ethic is exactly what it sounds like. It's all about the surface stuff, the superficial techniques. Think of it as like a toolkit of power strategies or communication skills, or even just trying to adopt a positive attitude, know? And while these might offer some, let's say, quick fix influence or some social mileage, they often feel, manipulative because they lack a real foundation. Covey actually had this kind of aha moment himself, trying to fix his son's behavior. He realized his efforts, even though they came from a good place, were rooted in this idea, this paradigm that his son was somehow inadequate. And that wasn't just ineffective, it actually communicated a deep lack of belief in his son's capabilities. It was, all technique, no real character underneath.
So if the personality ethic is about those external techniques, what's the deeper root Covey points to? Is it just about being a good person, or is there more to it?
Oh, it's much more profound than just being good. He calls it the character ethic, and it's built on these foundational principles. Things like integrity, humility, courage, justice, patience, what he calls basic goodness. And Covey really emphasizes that only basic goodness gives life to technique. Without that character base, the techniques are just empty shells. They don't work long term. It's like the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow. There are absolutely no shortcuts. You can't just cram for a test the night before if you haven't studied all semester, right? Or expect a harvest if you've neglected your farm all season. It simply doesn't work. Ralph Waldo Emerson put it perfectly. What you are shouts so loudly in my ears that I cannot hear what you say. Which means that secondary greatness, things like social recognition or having a polished image, without primary greatness, which is goodness in your character, it'll inevitably lead to relationship failure in the long run. And that inner hunger you mentioned, this is a huge part of why people feel it. ##2. The power of paradigms.
That really brings us to a concept that I think truly shifts perspective. Paradigms. Covey defines them as our mental models, our theories, perceptions, or frames of reference. Basically how we see the world, right?
Yeah.
Our deeply ingrained maps of reality.
Exactly. And the core concept here is, it sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. The map is not the territory. Our mental maps, which are heavily influenced by our conditioning, our experiences, they dictate how we interpret everything around us. Imagine you need to get to Central Chicago, but someone gives you a map of Detroit by mistake. Now, you could try harder, be more diligent, even double your speed, but you just get to the wrong place faster.
Right. More effort on the wrong path.
Exactly. You could even try to think more positively, telling yourself, I love exploring Detroit, but you'd still be lost if you needed Chicago. The fundamental problem isn't your behavior or your attitude in that case. It's that you have the wrong map. So the very first requirement for getting to the right place is an accurate map.
And Covey has this classic demonstration, doesn't he? The young lady picture. That perfectly illustrates how deeply these paradigms affect us.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's this ambiguous picture, right? And you show it to two different people. One might clearly see a young lady, the other just as clearly sees an old woman. And they might strongly disagree, even argue about it, but the thing is, they are both right based on their different prior conditioning. It dictates what they see first. It really highlights that idea. Where we stand depends on where we sit. We tend to think we see things objectively as they are, but that's actually pretty rare. We see the world as we are, or maybe as we've been conditioned to see it. So when we open our mouths to describe what we see, often we're describing ourselves, our own paradigms, maybe more than reality itself.
So what happens when you have that realization that maybe your map is wrong? That's where Covey brings in the really transformative power of a paradigm shift.
Yeah, a paradigm shift is more than just, changing your mind. It's that aha experience. It's a quantum leap in thinking. It's a sudden break from old ways that can lead to revolutionary change. Henry David Thoreau put it so profoundly. For every 1,000 hacking at the leaves of evil, there is one striking at the root. So if you want significant, real quantum change, you have to work on your basic paradigms, not just tweak the surface-level attitudes and behaviors. Think about Anwar Sadat, the former president of Egypt. He was, deeply conditioned to hate Israel. Yet while he was imprisoned, in solitary confinement actually, through intense introspection, he learned to examine and actually change that deeply ingrained hatred. This huge shift in his paradigm was a slow, deliberate process of self-rescripting. But it ultimately enabled him to initiate those historic peace efforts, leading to the Camp David Accord. That's a real-world, high-stakes paradigm shift right there, and it's really crucial here to understand that principles are different from practices and values. Principles are these deep, fundamental truths that have universal application, kind of like the law of gravity. They are the territory itself, these unchanging natural laws woven into the fabric of, well, every successful society and enduring institution. Practices, on the other hand, they're specific activities or actions. They're situationally specific, right? They might not work in every circumstance, like trying to raise your second child exactly like your first usually doesn't work.
Right. Context matters.
Exactly. And values. Well, Covey makes the point that even a gang of thieves can share values, but those values don't necessarily align with universal principles like fairness or integrity. When we value correct principles, we possess truth and knowledge of things as they truly are.
So the idea is, the more closely our mental maps, our paradigms are aligned with these correct principles, the more accurate and functional they become. Covey basically says this alignment will have an infinitely greater impact on our effectiveness, both personal and interpersonal, than just spending tons of effort trying to change our attitudes or behaviors alone. It's really about substance over superficiality, isn't it?
Yeah.
And making sure that latter, going back to that idea, is leaning against the right wall from the very beginning.
The PPC balance concept always struck me as deceptively simple, but wow, profoundly impactful. Covey illustrates it so beautifully with Aesop's fable, right? The goose and the golden egg. Yeah, exactly. In that fable, the farmer gets greedy, right? He kills the goose that lays the golden eggs because he wants all the eggs at once. Big mistake. Covey uses this to explain that true effectiveness means balancing production, P, that's the golden eggs, the desired results with production capability, PC. That's the goose, the asset or the capacity that produces those results. The real genius of PPC balance, I think, is understanding that neglecting the source of your success, whether it's your health, your relationships, your team's morale, just for short-term gains, always leads to an eventual collapse. It kind of reframes efficiency not just as doing more faster, but as nurturing the capacity to do anything at all. Sustainable high performance becomes the only real path. If you focus only on P, the eggs, you'll soon destroy your PC, the goose. But if you only focus on PC, grooming the goose all day, you'll have no P, no eggs to sustain you. It's a balance.
Okay, it's easy to see that with machines, maybe. But how do people typically miss applying this PPC balance in their personal lives? Or maybe in family dynamics, where does it go wrong?
Oh, that's a great question. It happens all the time. Think financially. Your most important financial asset is actually your capacity to earn, right? Your PC. If you only focus on the immediate income and you don't continually invest in improving your earning capacity, PC, through learning, skill development, even just networking, you really limit your future options.
Physically, you mentioned machines. A manager might run a machine constantly for production without any maintenance PC. That person maybe gets promoted for hitting targets,
Leaving the problem for the next person. Exactly. Their successor inherits a sick goose. A machine that's constantly breaking down, costs skyrocket. In human relationships, think about a marriage. If partners are more concerned about the benefits they get than preserving the relationship itself, PC, they start neglecting the little kindnesses, the quality time, and the relationship just deteriorates. Or in child rearing, if you're constantly nagging your child to clean their room without actually fostering their commitment or self-discipline, PC, through connection and trust, well, you might get a clean room today, but you're undermining the relationship and their internal motivation long term. You're getting the egg, but you're slowly killing the goose of that relationship.
Yeah, I remember Covey's story about taking his daughter to see Star Wars. That was a fantastic example of investing in PC. It wasn't really about the movie for him.
Exactly right. His daughter desperately wanted to see Star Wars, which apparently he wasn't too keen on. But he realized that by being open to her paradigm, by letting her teach him about Jedi Knights and connecting with her on her terms, he was making a huge deposit in their relationship's PC, the health of their connection. And that deep connection then allowed them to truly communicate and bond later on other things. Covey offers this really powerful insight for leaders, too. Treat your employees exactly as you want them to treat your best customers. PC work means treating employees and customers, too, as volunteers who offer their hearts and minds, not just, their hands doing a task.
And Covey notes that maintaining this balance, it's often a difficult judgment call, isn't it? Especially when immediate results are pressing hard. But he says it is truly the very essence of effectiveness, balancing those short-term gains with long-term sustainability. It's how you avoid burning out climbing that wrong wall, only to find you've sacrificed the goose that lays the golden eggs of your life, whatever those might be for you.
Okay, so before we dive into the specific habits, Covey defines a habit not just as something you do automatically. It's the intersection of three crucial things. There's knowledge, knowing what to do and why. Then there's skill, knowing how to do it. And finally, desire, the motivation, the want to do it. You really need all three working together for lasting, fundamental change to happen.
Right. And habits 1, 2, and 3 are all about self-mastery, aren't they? They're about moving from dependence, where you kind of need others to get what you want, to independence, where you can pretty much get what you want through your own efforts. These are the private victories. And Covey stresses they absolutely have to come before the public victories, which are about success in relationships and teamwork. You simply can't invert that process, right? You can't have lasting public success without first achieving that private mastery.
Okay, so habit 1 is be proactive. And Covey introduces proactivity as this profound ability to choose your response in that crucial space between stimulus and response. He uses the example of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist imprisoned in the Nazi death camps. Stripped of everything, his family, his dignity, his physical freedom, he discovered that his captors couldn't take away his ultimate freedom. The freedom to choose his attitude, his response to his circumstances. Between what happened to him, the stimulus, and his response, was his inherent power to choose. That right there is the essence of proactivity.
Wow, that really hits home. And it's easy to see the contrast, isn't it? Reactive people are often really affected by their physical environment, or what Covey calls social weather. If it's a good day, they feel good. If people treat them well, then they feel well. They basically empower the weaknesses of other people to control their moods and actions. Proactive people, though, they're value-driven. They kind of carry their own weather with them. Covey tells that story about a nurse who felt totally victimized by her difficult patient, just drained by it, until she realized she had the power to choose her own emotional response. And the moment she truly grasped that, she said she felt free, like she had been let out of San Quentin. It's such a powerful internal shift.
It really is. And proactive people focus their energy and efforts on their circle of influence. Those things they can actually do something about, like their attitudes, their choices, their actions. They don't waste energy fretting in their circle of concern, things they care about but really can't control, like, the national debt or other people's behavior. Covey points out that whether a problem you face is under your direct control, indirect control, or no control, the first step towards a solution is always within your circle of influence. Always. For instance, he worked with this executive team who spent hours complaining about their dictatorial boss. Just complaining. But one manager, instead of joining the gripe sessions, focused on making valuable contributions within his own department, within his circle of influence. And little by little, his circle of influence expanded until eventually the president sought his opinion regularly and no significant moves were made without his input. He acted on what he could control.
So taking initiative really means recognizing our responsibility, as Covey puts it, to make things happen. I like how Covey mentions that in his family, they'd sometimes tell their children, use your R&I, meaning resourcefulness and initiative, whenever they started complaining about something they couldn't directly change. It's a simple way to nudge them, and us, into proactive thinking.
It is, and Covey suggests a pretty powerful 30-day test for proactivity. He says for 30 days, try to work only in your circle of influence. Make and keep small commitments to yourself. Try to be a light and a model, rather than a judge or a critic of others. And admit your mistakes immediately, without blaming or making excuses. For you, the listener, you might just try analyzing your own language. Listen for reactive phrases like, if only I can't, or I have to. Just noticing them, becoming aware, is a huge first step.
Okay, moving on to habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. This one means starting everything you do with a really clear vision of your destination. And Covey suggests using the end of your own life as the ultimate frame of reference. He has this incredibly powerful, almost uh, unsettling exercise. Visualize your own funeral, maybe 3 years from today. And think about what you would want each of the 4 speakers there. Someone from your family, a friend, someone from work, and maybe someone from your community service. What would you want them to say about you? What kind of character, what contributions, what achievements would you want them to remember? This exercise, I mean, it's sobering, but it truly touches your deep fundamental values, doesn't it? This is where we actively realign that ladder, making sure it's genuinely leaning against the wall of our deepest values and really addressing that initial inner hunger we talked about at the start.
Absolutely. And this habit is based on a really powerful principle. All things are created twice. There's always a mental or first creation, the blueprint, the vision, the plan, and then there's a physical or second creation,
Right.
the actual manifestation, the building of it. Think about building a house. You visualize every detail, you draw blueprints, you plan meticulously before you hammer the first nail. Right.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Or raising children. You keep the vision of the kind of responsible, self-disciplined, loving adults you hope they'll become in mind as you interact with them daily. Before you take a trip, you determine your destination and plan the best route. It's always this conscious, intentional, mental creation first.
And this leads to a really critical distinction that Covey hammers home. The difference between leadership and management. Leadership is that first creation. It's about doing the right things, dealing with the vision, the direction, the talk line. And it's more of a right brain activity, isn't it? It's like being in a jungle and making sure the machete wielders are cutting through the right jungle, ensuring you're actually going in the right direction. Management, on the other hand, that's the second creation. It's about doing things right, the efficiency, the bottom line, how to get through that jungle effectively once you know it's the right one. And leadership must come first. It's pretty useless to be an incredibly efficient manager if you're leading people efficiently to the wrong destination.
Right. And through our unique human gifts, self-awareness, imagination, conscience, we can actually engage in what Covey calls rescripting. This means consciously examining the scripts we've been given by our upbringing, our culture, our circumstances, and then writing our own scripts, changing those ineffective paradigms. Sadat's transformation in prison, which we mentioned earlier, that's a perfect example of rescripting his deeply ingrained hatred. Covey also shares his own personal struggle with, say, overreacting to his children, even though he loved them deeply. He became aware that his daily behavior didn't align with his profound values for fatherhood. That awareness created the desire to rescript himself, to become more patient, more loving in his responses.
And this is where developing a personal mission statement becomes so incredibly important, isn't it? It's like creating your own personal constitution, grounded in correct principles, that guides all your decisions and provides meaning and direction to your life. It's not just a to-do list. Covey says it's a to-be list.
Exactly. And most people, often unconsciously, build their lives around various common centers. Maybe it's a spouse or family or money, work, possessions, even friends or enemies, maybe church, or sometimes just the self. Covey explains that while all these things can be important, if any one of them becomes your sole center, it creates instability and vulnerability. It limits your security, your guidance, your wisdom, and your power. For instance, if you're spouse-centered, your emotional security might be totally tied to your spouse's moods or treatment of you, making you fragile.
Yeah, I see that.
Or if you're money-centered, your sense of worth might fluctuate with your net worth, and your priorities might push aside family or health or integrity. In stark contrast, a principle-centered paradigm, based on those timeless, unchanging principles we talked about, provides intrinsic security. It provides broad, long-term wisdom and unrestricted power to act wisely, regardless of external circumstances or how others treat you. It's a rock-solid foundation.
So how do we tap into that creative right brain for this first creation, for developing that vision? Covey discusses a couple of ways, right? Sometimes it happens through unplanned, often difficult, perspective-expanding experiences like a serious illness or a major setback.
But proactively, you can consciously create these experiences too, like doing that funeral visualization exercise, or maybe writing your own eulogy, or visualizing your 25th wedding anniversary in detail.
Absolutely. He also talks about using affirmations, but not just wishful thinking. These affirmations should be personal, positive, stated in the present tense, visual, and emotional. For example, a parent struggling with impatience could affirm, quote, "It is deeply satisfying emotional that I, personal respond, present tense, with wisdom, love, firmness, and self-control. Positive when my children misbehave." You visualize yourself doing it. It's not about manipulating reality with thoughts, but about consciously programming your desired character and behavior into your subconscious. You see world-class athletes and peak performers do this all the time, don't you? They are visualizers. They begin with the end in mind before they even step onto the field or stage. They see the perfect performance, they feel it, they experience it mentally first, and this applies to every area of life.
And then, by identifying your various roles in life, maybe as an individual, a spouse, a parent, a manager, a community member, and then setting long-term goals for each role, you give concrete structure and direction to that personal mission statement. It's taking that overarching vision and breaking it down into actionable areas, making it real.
Exactly. And this concept extends really powerfully to groups too. Creating family mission statements or organizational mission statements can be incredibly effective. Covey shares this inspiring example of a hotel chain. Their mission was uncompromising personalized service. And the key was every single employee, from the housekeepers to the top managers, participated in creating and then internalizing that mission statement. This led to phenomenal service, where employees would even admit mistakes when nobody else saw them, simply because it was part of their shared mission, their shared why. And the insight there is so crucial. People aren't truly committed to determinations that are made for them. Involvement in the creation process is absolutely key to genuine buy-in and ownership.
Okay, so if habit 2 is the first, mental creation, then habit 3, put first things first, is the second creation,
Sure.
the physical creation.
Yeah.
This is the daily doing it, the moment-by-moment exercise of your independent will, based on that vision and those values. You've created the vision, you know your values, now you actually have to live it day in, day out.
Precisely. This habit is all about effective self-management, and Covey uses the incredibly useful time management matrix. You've probably seen it. It categorizes activities based on two factors: urgency and importance. So quadrant first is urgent and important. These are your crises, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects. We all live here some of the time. Quadrant two is not urgent, but important. This is the key quadrant. It includes things like prevention, planning, relationship building, seeking out new opportunities, exercise, learning. This is where truly effective people spend most of their time. Quadrant third is urgent, but not important. This is deceptive. It's often interruptions, some meetings, some mail, busy work, often other people's priorities pressing on you. It feels productive, but it isn't really advancing your core goals.
The siren song of the urgent but trivial.
Exactly. And quadrant fourth is not urgent and not important. These are the true time wasters: trivia, some phone calls, excessive screen time, etc.
And let's be honest, how many of us have spent way too much time getting sucked into quadrant 3, thinking we're being productive just because our email inbox is full or we're rushing around? Covey explains that the real key to moving into quadrant 2, where the leverage is learning to say no politely, respectfully, but firmly to quadrant 3 and 4 activities. He tells that story about his wife, Sandra, who felt pressured into chairing a committee she didn't really want to or have time for. When she later heard a friend pleasantly and effectively refuse a similar request, Sandra wished she could do the same. This highlights Covey's insight. The enemy of the best is often the good. Having a bigger yes burning inside your mission statement, your clear Q2 priorities, that's what empowers you to say no to other things, even good things, that don't align with your deepest values and goals.
Absolutely. And habit 3 also involves mastering delegation as a way to increase both your production P and your production capability, PC. Covey makes a great distinction between gopher delegation and stewardship delegation. Gopher delegation is very method-focused. It's like, go do this, go do that, tell me when it's done. It offers very limited leverage. Covey tells a funny story about yelling, "Take it," to his wife while she was filming something for him, very inefficient.
Yeah, micromanaging, basically.
Pretty much. Stewardship delegation, however, focuses on results, not methods. It empowers the other person, but it requires taking the time up front for clear mutual understanding in 5 specific areas. These are desired results: what does success look like? Guidelines: what are the rules or boundaries? Resources: what support is available? Accountability: how will progress be measured? And consequences: what happens, good or bad, based on the results. It's a much deeper conversation up front.
He shares that great anecdote about his son managing the yard, right? Instead of giving him a checklist of chores every week, he set up a stewardship agreement. The desired result was simple: a green and clean yard. Covey says it took more time and patience up front, training his son, letting him make mistakes, but ultimately it built his son's self-management skills and sense of responsibility immensely. The father became a helper and resource, not a micromanager or nag. That sounds like a real long-term PC investment.
It absolutely is. And this whole approach is built on the powerful idea that trust is the highest form of human motivation. It definitely takes more time, more patience, more training up front to build competence and truly empower people, whether it's your kids or your employees. But the long-term payoff is huge. It yields significant leverage, builds capability in others, and frees up your own time and energy for your own high-leverage quadrant 2 activities.
So we've covered the private victories habits 1, 2, and 3. Now we move towards interdependence, the public victories. And Covey is really clear, isn't he, that private victory precedes public victory. That self-mastery, being proactive, knowing your end in mind, putting first things first, that's the absolute foundation for effective relationships. He has that great line, "You can't talk your way out of problems you behave yourself into." It's so true. You can't just smooth things over with techniques if the underlying character or habits aren't there.
Exactly. And this brings us to the central metaphor for relationships in the book, the emotional bank account. Think of it like a financial bank account, but for the level of trust in a relationship. You make deposits through acts of kindness, courtesy, honesty, keeping promises. These build up a reserve of trust. Withdrawals happen through things like disrespect, interrupting, overreacting, ignoring someone, breaking commitments. These deplete the trust balance. Now, if the balance is high, communication is easy, instant, and effective. Mistakes are forgiven easily because there's a cushion of trust. But if the balance is low or overdrawn, communication becomes difficult, tense, and ineffective. Even simple misunderstandings get magnified, and everything feels like a potential battle.
That makes perfect sense. It's such a useful way to think about relationships. So what are some of the key ways Covey suggests we make deposits into this crucial emotional bank account?
He outlines 6 major ways to make deposits. First, and maybe most important, is understanding the individual. This is key because what constitutes a deposit for one person might actually be a withdrawal for another. You have to understand what's important to them. Like the friend Covey mentions, who didn't particularly like baseball, but took his son to every major league game in their area because he liked his son that much, showing he understood what truly mattered to his son.
Right, it's about their currency, not yours.
Precisely. Or the college professor who spent hours building a miniature wall of China with his young son to reconnect, understanding his son's unique interests at that time. Second is attending to the little things. Small kindnesses and courtesies are huge deposits. Conversely, small instances of disrespect or thoughtlessness can be really large withdrawals, especially in key relationships. Covey regretted not taking just a few moments to truly connect with his son Stephen after an outing, realizing those little things, though seemingly minor, leave a lasting impression. Third, keeping commitments. This is a massive deposit. Making a promise and keeping it builds enormous trust. Breaking a promise, that's a massive withdrawal. So be incredibly careful what you promise and always follow through. Fourth, clarifying expectations. Covey believes that most relationship difficulties stem from conflicting or ambiguous expectations about roles and goals. Making expectations explicit up front saves immense time, heartache, and builds trust. Think about job descriptions or who does which chores, and a family clarity prevents resentment. Fifth, showing personal integrity. This means being loyal to those who are not present. If you defend someone who's being criticized behind their back, the people present trust that you won't badmouth them either. It builds trust through congruence. And sixth, apologizing sincerely when you make a withdrawal. Admitting you were wrong sincerely and quickly is crucial for restoring trust when you've messed up. Covey tells a story of apologizing to his son David after overreacting in a hallway. It rebuilt the connection. And Covey also makes a really critical point about unconditional love, especially with children. When we attach strings and conditions to our love and support, we actually encourage counterdependency, which is a kind of low, manipulative form of dependency, rather than fostering true independence. Dag Hammarskjöld, the former UN Secretary General, said something profound. It is more noble to give yourself completely to one individual than to labor diligently for the salvation of the masses. This really highlights that sometimes healing and rebuilding our core relationships takes more courage, more character, than focusing on broad impersonal goals. And remember, those frustrating interpersonal P problems, the relationship difficulties, they are actually PC opportunities to build deeper trust, understanding, and capability in the relationship if we handle them well.
Okay, now habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This one feels like a monumental paradigm shift for most of us. Because let's be real, most of us, myself included, often listen with the intent to reply, right. We're forming our response while the other person is still talking, not truly trying to understand their perspective.
It's such a common pitfall. Covey uses the analogy of an optometrist. Imagine you go in, complain vaguely about your eyes, and the optometrist immediately takes off his own glasses, hands them to you, and says, "Here, put these on. They've worked great for me for 10 years.
You'd run out of there.
Exactly. You wouldn't trust a professional who prescribes without diagnosing. Yet we do this all the time in communication. We tend to listen through our own autobiography, using what Covey calls the 4 autobiographical responses. We probe, ask questions from our own frame of reference. We evaluate, agree or disagree. We advise, give counsel based on our experience. Or we interpret, try to figure people out based on our own motives. None of these really give the other person psychological air. They make it incredibly hard for them to open up and feel truly heard and understood.
Wow, that optometrist analogy just really clicked for me. It perfectly captures why we often feel unheard or dismissed when we're just given advice before the other person really gets where we're coming from. So what does empathic listening actually look like? How do we do it?
Empathic listening is listening with the deep intent to genuinely understand. It's getting inside the other person's frame of reference, seeing the world through their eyes, understanding how they feel. The process involves, first, maybe mimicking the content to show you heard the words, then rephrasing the content in your own words, then reflecting the feeling behind the words. And the fourth, deepest stage is combining those last two. Rephrasing the content and reflecting the feeling. For instance, if your son comes home and says, "Boy, Dad, I've had it. School is for the birds." Instead of jumping to advice or judgment, an empathic response might be something like, "You sound really frustrated about school today."
Just acknowledging the feeling.
Exactly. This creates that psychological air, it validates their feelings, and it opens the door for what Covey calls a soul-to-soul flow, where the other person trusts you enough to reveal their deeper thoughts, feelings, and maybe the real issue underneath. Covey shares a powerful story about a father-son conversation. The father started by just trying to empathically listen to his son's complaints about school. And because he truly listened, without judgment or advice, the conversation transformed. The son eventually opened up about his real fear. He was terrified of flunking. It wasn't just about school being boring. It was deep insecurity. Empathic listening got them there.
This reminds me of that ancient Greek philosophy of influence. Ethos, pathos, and logos. It's not just about the logic of what you say, is it? There's an order to it.
It's not at all. Covey explains the crucial sequence for effective influence. First comes ethos, that's your personal credibility, your character, the trust people have in you, built through habits 1, 2, 3, and your emotional bank account. Then comes pathos, that's your empathic side, the emotional connection, understanding the other person's feelings and perspective. That's habit 5. And only then comes logos, the logic, the reasoning, the presentation of your ideas. Most people, especially in disagreements or trying to persuade, jump straight to logos. They lead with logic and facts, but it often fails because they haven't established ethos, trust, or pathos understanding. If people don't trust you, or if they don't feel understood by you, your perfectly logical arguments will likely fall on deaf ears or even create resistance. Seeking first to understand is always within your circle of influence. It gives you accurate data to work with, and it builds those crucial emotional bank account deposits needed for influence. Okay, so after seeking first to understand, habit 5, we arrive at habit 6. Synergize. Synergy, simply put, is when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's about 1 + 1 = 3, or 10, or 100. It's about combining different perspectives, different strengths to create new alternatives, new solutions, something that wasn't there before. It requires truly opening your mind and heart to new possibilities. It's not just compromise, it's creative cooperation.
Right. Synergistic communication isn't just about being nice. It's about mutual learning, mutual influence, leading to insights and momentum that build on each other. But Covey says it requires enormous personal security and openness, and a spirit of adventure. It takes courage to value differences. He describes a university classroom experience where, after a spirit of trust and psychological safety was built up over time through deposits, empathic listening, students felt safe enough to share deeply personal experiences and insights related to the topic. This collective vulnerability and openness led to a new, cohesive, and profound understanding for everyone that went far beyond what the instructor initially planned. It was almost magical, he says.
It can feel that way. And when you combine a high emotional bank account, a win-win mindset, which is habit 4, focused on seeking mutual benefit, and empathic listening, habit 5, you can really fish for the third alternative. Covey uses the example of a couple planning a vacation. The husband wants to go fishing in the wilderness. The wife wants to visit her ailing mother in another state. A typical compromise might be unsatisfying. Maybe they split the time, or one gives in resentfully.
Or they take separate vacations.
Right. But with synergy, using habits 4 and 5, they listen deeply to understand the needs behind the wants. He needs relaxation and nature. She needs to connect with and support her mother. Through open, creative communication, they might discover a third alternative, maybe a quiet cabin near the mother's home, with fishing nearby, allowing quality time for everyone involved. It's about discovering that shared, higher ground, something better than either initial proposal.
This also involves what Covey calls psychic synergy, or maybe whole brain thinking, accessing both our intuitive, creative right brain capacities, which deal with feelings, the big picture, the gestalt, and our analytical, logical left brain capacities, which focus on logic, word, specifics, parts.
That's a really crucial point for synergy. Many communication problems arise because people approach things from different sides of the brain, so to speak. Covey shared a story of a husband who kept demanding specifics from his wife about a communication problem they were having, while she had the strong general feeling she couldn't easily articulate into logical points. He was operating from the left brain, she from the right. Effective synergistic communication requires bridging these different ways of seeing and processing information, respecting and valuing both the logical and the intuitive. And this brings us back to the importance of valuing differences. Covey says, when we're left only to our own experiences, we suffer from a shortage of data. We only have one perspective. Recognizing that two people can see things differently and both be right, like with that old young woman picture, is the beginning of synergy. Those differences become resources, leading to powerful insights and the discovery of those creative third alternatives. It's really where innovation and breakthroughs happen.
Okay, finally, we arrive at habit 7, sharpen the saw. This one is all about personal PC, preserving and enhancing your greatest asset, which is you. It's about continually renewing the 4 fundamental dimensions of your nature, making sure your own goose, the source of all your effectiveness, stays healthy and strong. This habit makes all the others possible.
Exactly. It's the habit of self-renewal. Covey details these 4 dimensions of renewal. First, the physical dimension. This means taking care of your physical body through healthy eating, adequate rest, and regular exercise that addresses endurance, aerobic activity like running, swimming, biking, flexibility, stretching, and strength, resistance training like push-ups, weights. Covey actually mentions the no pain, no gain principle in strength training, where muscle fibers tear slightly and then rebuild stronger. He notes this applies to our emotional muscles too. Developing patience or empathy often requires stretching beyond our comfort zone, and this is a classic quadrant 2 activity. Regularly exercising builds not just physical health, but also the habit 1 muscles of proactivity. You're acting based on the value with health, not just reacting to moods or fatigue.
Makes sense. What's the second dimension?
Second is the spiritual dimension. This is about renewing your core, your center, your value system. It's about connecting to the source of meaning and purpose in your life, connecting to timeless truths. How people do this varies greatly, of course. It could be through prayer, meditation, immersing yourself in great literature, or inspiring music, or spending time in nature. Covey recounts a story about his friend Gordon, who was feeling stuck. Gordon's doctor gave him 4 prescriptions. Be still. Listen to your inner voice. Reach back. Remember inspiring moments. Examine your motives. Asking why you do what you do, ensuring it aligns with contribution, not just self-interest. And write your worries on the sand, letting go of things outside your control.
Wow, powerful prescriptions.
Aren't they? It highlights that spiritual renewal provides leadership to our lives. Martin Luther famously said, "I have so much to do today, I'll need to spend another hour on my knees," showing prayer as a source of power and perspective. And David O. McKay taught that the greatest battles of life are fought out daily in the silent chambers of the soul. That's the spiritual dimension.
Okay, physical, spiritual. What's third?
Third is the mental dimension. This is about continually educating yourself, keeping your mind sharp, and expanding your horizons, long after formal schooling ends. This includes things like serious reading of quality literature and current thought, analytical thinking, problem solving, and writing, which clarifies thought. It also involves consciously managing external influences, particularly things like excessive screen time. Covey noted surveys showing the TV is on for 35-45 hours a week in most homes. That's a powerful socializing influence, but not always a positive or enriching one. So mental renewal involves making conscious choices about what you feed your mind.
Right. And the fourth dimension?
Fourth is the social-emotional dimension. This dimension is renewed primarily in our interactions with others, but it starts with our own inner security, which comes from habits 1, 2, and 3. We find security and renewal in making meaningful contributions, in service, whether it's in our work or through anonymous acts of kindness. It also involves positively scripting others, seeing the potential in them, believing in them, and reflecting their proactive nature back to them even when they don't see it themselves. Covey refers to The Man of La Mancha, where Don Quixote sees the prostitute Aldonza not just as she is, but as the noble lady Dulcinea she could be. His belief helps transform her.
The Pygmalion effect.
Exactly. He also shares that striking computer experiment with elementary school kids labeled bright or dumb based on fake test scores. The teacher's paradigms and expectations created self-fulfilling prophecies, profoundly affecting the children's actual IQ scores over the year. This really highlights the power of the abundance mentality, believing there's plenty out there for everyone, celebrating other successes, which is vital for positive scripting. It contrasts with the scarcity mentality, which sees life as a limited pie, fostering comparison and competition.
And Covey recommends making this renewal a priority, right? He talks about the daily private victory.
Yes, he strongly advocates for dedicating a minimum of 1 hour every day to renewing these dimensions, particularly the physical, spiritual, and mental. This is a core quadrant 2 activity entirely within your circle of influence, and it's absolutely foundational to developing and maintaining all the other 6 habits. It's like sharpening the saw itself if the saw is dull. Cutting down the tree is exhausting and ineffective. It's non-negotiable, personal PC time.
And this isn't just for individuals, is it? Organizations need renewal too.
Absolutely. Covey points out that organizations also need to consciously renew themselves in all 4 dimensions to thrive. They need economic health, physical, how they treat people, social, emotional, how people are developed and used, mental, and a sense of purpose, contribution, and integrity, spiritual. If any dimension is neglected, it creates friction, negative synergy, and ultimately undermines the entire system's effectiveness and long-term viability. Hashtag tag tag outro.
Wow. What a truly profound journey this deep dive has been. From that fundamental shift to the character ethic, through understanding the power of our paradigms, the critical balance of P and PC, and then those transformative private and public victories, you, our listeners, now have, I hope, a really comprehensive framework for understanding and starting to apply these incredibly powerful principles for personal and interpersonal effectiveness. It really is an inside-out approach, isn't it? Addressing that inner hunger, not with quick fixes, but by helping you ensure your ladder is leaning firmly against the right wall.
Indeed. And Covey makes it profoundly clear throughout the book there is simply no shortcuts to true growth and genuine effectiveness. That law of the harvest governs everything. You always reap what you sow, no more, no less. True effectiveness, lasting success, and fulfillment, it comes from diligently applying these principles through continuous learning and renewal. It's a lifelong upward journey, not a destination or a quick fix.
And that leads us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you today. Covey describes this journey of effectiveness not as a straight line, but as an upward spiral of learn, commit, and do. Learn, commit, do. Over and over. We often deceive ourselves if we think that just learning, just listening to this deep dive, for example, is enough. The transformation comes in the committing and the doing. So as you've been listening, perhaps you've already started identifying some of your own personality ethic pitfalls, maybe some reactive habits. Or perhaps you're thinking about that sick goose in your own life, that neglected area of personal, professional PC, that relationship, that skill, that part of your health that's maybe crying out for attention. Consider this. What one small commitment could you make and keep, starting today, right now, to begin your own upward spiral of growth? Which habit, or even just one aspect of one habit, will you choose to learn, commit, and do first, knowing that even the smallest consistent step taken with intention can lead to revolutionary change over time? What's your first step?